What's up, my friends, and welcome back to my channel. I had just done a guest appearance on my publisher's podcast about a few hours ago, and I wasn't planning on making a video tonight, but we had a discussion. He asked me a certain question which got me thinking, and I said, I should do a video about this to clarify, because I told him on that podcast too that I have a YouTube channel that I've been doing a lot of daily videos where I'm trying to offer as much clarification for the topics in my book, The Sleeper Agent: The Rise of Lyme Disease, Chronic Illness, and the Great Imitator Antigens of Biological Warfare. And we had got on the subject of COVID-19 or SARS coronavirus 2 in the whole thing about I don't know if anybody has heard me talk about this before, but I talked about an explosion at the Vector laboratory in Siberia, which is in Russia, and it was always my analysis that it was actually something that came from Vector rather than Wuhan. And I'm going to only say that the question was put forward to me about the feasibility of biodefense releasing a virus that is less lethal to knock out that virus, so that people would get infected with that instead of the SARS coronavirus 2 virus is not very lethal as it is. There were plenty of people that died, but it's just how these new viruses, they come in, they cause a lot of damage at first, and then when the population's been exposed for a while, it tends to die down. But at any event, I said that it was not a good idea, but I also wanted to clarify, and I did talk about how HLA, which is so just like there are variants of viruses, there are also variants of the immune system different people have, so it's like a genetic thing, kind of. And just how their immune systems are built, that you can have the same agent cause no disease in 80%, but then in the other 20% they get a fatal disease. That's the HLA variation, and then it's like a genetic factor, and they saw this with polio, but I didn't make the point clear when I talked to him then, and I thought I would now, is that what Eric Chob's immune tolerance shows, is that there are two spectrums of disease. There is the acute disease, which is measured by heavy inflammation, and often this includes fatalities. But then in the complete polar opposite spectrum, you have chronic disease, and it's marked by an absence of immune response or a suppressed immune response, which then reactivates dormant viruses, which then contribute to central nervous system invasion, mental health problems, neurological problems, chronic disease, and cancer. So as you tip the scales away, as you suppress the immune system, you may be able to avoid that fatal response. But what happens is it tips in favor of chronic disease along with that dark triad of immune tolerance, and that includes raising the cancer rate. And that's why I've made the point that that would not be a good idea, because the dark triad of immune tolerance is such an immense problem as it is, and affecting the economy and the health and well-being of our society to such an extent that you're only adding to that problem. And yes, it's like, okay, I can see the point in I have no problem with trying to prevent disease, except by the way it's done. And I think it's harmful. It's more harmful trying to prevent fatal diseases by exposing people to toxic proteins that induce immunosuppression and then bring on that dark triad: cancer, mental illness, and chronic disease. So, in the end, and only a certain percentage of people would be affected by a virus that causes these fatal reactions, and it would be such a small percentage. But if they had figured out the HLA typing and the people who are most at risk, they'd find that it was only a small margin, and it doesn't make sense to tip the scales in more favor of chronic disease, because there's absolutely nothing being done about that problem in America. And this is why the public health system is a complete and utter failure. And they are actually contributing to chronic disease, mental illness, neurological problems, and cancers through their responses too, because antigens are all that is needed to induce immune tolerance. You do not need an active virus. You do not need a bacteria. All you need are those antigens which stimulate immune receptors, the toll-like receptors 2 and 1 or 2 and 6. So just like the brain has receptors that responds to drugs, well, the immune system has receptors that responds to antigens. And these toll-like receptors, there's 12 known, I think there's, is it 12? I think there's 10 known human toll-like receptors right now. And they know that toll-like receptors 2 and 1, because they're often stimulated in pairs, and 2 and 6 will induce the immune tolerance phenomenon, which is often a long, slow, drawn-out chronic disease that ensues when you introduce these toxic lipids into the blood through a needle. These antigens, because they're lipid-like antigens, and the same is true for chemicals that are used as adjuvants, like polyethylene glycol is also a lipid, and that also induces tolerance. But, I have tried for so many years to explain to people that it matters not whether that antigen gets into you from a biological warfare agent that is either transmitted by a tick or mosquito, or if it is straight up injected into you and claimed to protect you. It matters not. The effect on the immune system is the same. It's inducing the very same disease as these stealth biological warfare agents. There's no doubt about it. And that's exactly what Eric Traub's immune tolerance shows. And it shows that we have very fundamental flaws in our paradigms of immunology and in our paradigm of disease. Because the Western public health system has done everything possible to completely deny these chronic diseases that are proliferating society, where all these people are so worn out, exhausted, sick, chronic headaches, you name it, chronic fatigue, But then when they go into the public health system, they're told there's nothing wrong with you. No abnormal blood work. There's no inflammation. We can't find anything wrong with you. So then they label that. Eventually, when the person continues to keep seeking help for this non-existent disease, eventually it is called somatoform. And it's a fake disease, but it's basically like, okay, you're imagining your symptoms, and this is actually making you have a physical disease. That's the gist of it. It's complete nonsense. And what my book shows is how these stealth diseases work. They work by inducing immunological tolerance. And that means they can have a very active infection with no antibodies, no inflammation, and no abnormal blood work. And as long as they deny that form of disease, they will then the damage that's being done from their responses and their ways of protecting people will always be there, but they will always deny it, and they will so therefore they will say that there's no adverse effects of these measures, even though there are. I don't know if I'm totally making sense of what I'm saying here, but basically these protective measures are inducing the same diseases as these stealth biological weapons. And like I said, it matters not, and that's why I called it the great imitator antigens of biological warfare. Because all you need is the antigen. That is the weapon. That is the mechanism that brings on the immune tolerance, the chronic immunosuppression. And while I am not against protecting against fatal diseases, I am absolutely against doing it the way that they are, using toxic material injected into the blood. Absolutely not, because all that really does is bring on more chronic disease. And this is, despite fatal diseases, the problem of chronic disease, mental illness, and cancer is so unbelievably rampant today that if things continue in this direction, the future of America will be imminent death. I mean, of the country, just of society in general, because you see all of these neurological diseases, mental illnesses, and cancers are proliferating like 100-fold. And with each year, it's just getting worse and worse and worse. And soon about half the children born in America will be autistic and have all these neurological diseases that they can't come back from. So that is my answer to that question. And until we start recognizing immune tolerance in this nasty dark triad, then this problem is just going to continuously get worse and worse and worse. So that is it, and I will be making some more videos, of course. I will try to continue this momentum of putting out videos often. I will think of more topics to clarify and discuss, and we'll take it from there. And when I get that, when I receive the link to the podcast that I did tonight, I will post it here as well. So with that said, everybody take care of yourself, be yourself, build yourself, and I will see you on the other side.
With one thing, I don't know why. It doesn't even matter how hard you try. Keep that in mind. I designed this rhyme to explain in due time. All I know, time is a valuable thing. Watch it fly by as the pendulum swings. Watch it count down to the end of the day. The clock takes life away. It's so unreal. Didn't look down below. Watch the time go right out the window. Trying to hold on to didn't even know I wasted it all just to watch you go. I kept everything inside, and even though I tried, it all fell apart. What it meant to be will eventually be a memory of a time when I tried so hard and got so far, but in the end, it doesn't even matter. I had to fall to lose it all, but in the end, it doesn't even matter. One thing, I don't know why, it doesn't even matter how hard you try. Keep that in mind, I designed this rhyme to remind myself how I tried so hard. In spite of the way you were mocking me, acting like I was part of your property, remembering all the times you fought with me, I'm surprised it got so. Things aren't the way they were before. You wouldn't even recognize me anymore. Not that you knew me back then, but it all comes back to me in the end. You kept everything inside, and even though I tried, it all fell apart. What it meant to me will eventually be a memory of a time when I tried so hard.